Sustainable You is a casual, interactive, yet informative series detailing and cataloging the sustainability experience. Moreover, this is a short podcast docuseries detailing the thoughts and experiences of passionate advocates towards all things eco-friendly. Our journey is to know how and why understanding sustainable development towards the triple bottom line of people, profit, and planet can contribute to a more mindful, holistic, and inclusive world. Specifically, this podcast showcases what makes you a changemaker, innovator, and transformer as you tackle sustainability challenges for current and future generations to resolve the so-called wicked problems. Calgary Climate Hub is a local nonprofit that is a grassroots and volunteer-led organization championing climate change initiatives by educating and empowering Calgarians to become active climate citizens. As a nonpartisan initiative, Calgary Climate Hub encourages others who may otherwise be underrepresented and overlooked in the climate action movement to become mobilized and garner a sense of agency, collaborating, of course, towards a more sustainable and equitable future. For today's interview, I learned more about Calgary Climate Hub's advocacy efforts on climate change issues that matter most to Calgarians, from youth activism to growing microforests and greening underserved BIPOC neighborhoods. It's truly eye-opening to see the impact and ripple effect they are having.
Hi, my name is Jared Bluestein, and I'm the Executive Director of the Calgary Climate Hub. We're a grassroots volunteer-led nonprofit that unites all Calgarians to become educated and empowered to take meaningful local action on climate change.
Okay, and before we do get started, I'm just going to play a quick icebreaker with you, if you don't mind, just to get to know you a little bit better. Sure. So I'm going to send you a list of adjectives, and then you just pick out one. So basically, the idea is to choose one adjective amongst the list that best describes your personal nature or persona in regards, basically in regards to who you are. So the idea isn't meant to typecast you as being personality type A or B or anything like that. It's just in regards to your persona and your current career and vocation.
I'm going to say bold.
Okay. Why is that?
I believe that we've been confronting much of the same societal issues, sort of surrounding, inequity, structural sources of oppression, ecological harm for quite a long time. I think we've been sort of turning these issues over and over, maybe for most of humanity, but I would say it's definitely become quite acute since maybe the 1970s, and so I believe we need to be more bold now in our demands, and we need to be more assertive in our positions. And, we definitely want to unite all working class people to address issues that they think are important to them. But we do need to stop trying to appease everyone. So I believe that we are entering a period of boldness where, everyone who's working to increase equity and justice in our societies needs to be more bold.
Okay, great. No, I like that boldness. A lot of people choose that for some reason. I don't know why that is, but it's good to hear your perspective. Okay, great. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay, and then just these next couple questions again, just to get to know you better. So, what makes you uncertain and what makes you curious?
I'd say living makes me curious. I just I have a sort of a unfounded thirst for knowledge, and I just want to understand the way the world works. I can't tell you why, but just being a human in the world makes me very curious. Maybe that's a cop-out. And uncertain. Ooh, that's God, I guess I could touch on that on a number of levels. I think that uncertainty is maybe baked into our processes of enculturation and socialization. I think much of our societal structures aim to instill a hierarchical relationship where we learn from quite a young age to adopt a banking mode model of education. That idea, of course, comes from Paulo Freire, who talks about, two dominant modes of education. The banking mode being like, you're an empty vessel, you don't know anything, and I'm going to fill you up with knowledge, and then you're going to repeat it back to me. So I think on the one hand, like, our societal structures inherently make us uncertain, and they're designed to do so. Maybe on like a more personal level, I'm trying to be like quite aware of the space I take up in my life, and the way in which sort of my boldness in communication can sometimes be maybe off-putting or unnerving for certain people. And so I think sometimes when I start to think too much or maybe get too reflective on how I'm communicating, I've become a bit uncertain.
Okay, great. Okay, cool. And just to get you to know you a little bit more and who you are, so again, tell me about yourself, your struggles, your aspirations, your contributions that led you to get involved in the Calgary Climate Hub and climate action in general.
Yeah, sure. So I've been, quite concerned with issues of inequity in our society for a long time. My undergraduate and graduate work really focused on how civil society is seeking to create structures, work arrangements, relationships that are more equitable and just. So it's something that's really driven me in my life. After finishing my graduate work, I wanted to do more than just have a thesis sitting on my desk, and so I kind of took my learnings and founded a worker-owned plant-based restaurant here in Calgary, which we ran for 5 years. And the goal there, in my mind, was to demonstrate a more equitable form of economy and work, a model of solidarity economy, if you would, to sort of be an example both to Calgarians and beyond, around how we can do things better. During that time of founding and running the worker co-op, I was also co-managing another nonprofit with an environmental focus. And so I think these things obviously led me to my role here at the Calgary Climate Hub. I am very much focused more on the realm of economy as the intersecting piece of inequity in our societies. And so, a lot of what I try to do is around addressing capitalism and the various issues of contemporary capitalism that I see. There's less work in that realm, I suppose. People, talking about capitalism is still a challenging thing to do in our societies today, and it's way more abstract in terms of how you address it. But when you look at the issues capitalism is causing, I would say like a degradation in our community cohesion, destruction of our ecosystems, increasing concerns around labor rights, access to healthcare, social services. All these things are things that people understand and things that we can address in a more concrete way. And so, in trying to think about the next stage of my life after closing down the Allium and quitting my last nonprofit, I saw this position for the Hub. And, while it doesn't deal directly with or overtly with issues of economy, I think it's a great way of me dealing with the things I care about. So I like to say like this role is sort of a blend of the two things that I almost like to do most, which are addressing issues of inequity and just like building people up, empowering people. Those are two things that I really enjoy doing in my life. And so here at the Climate Hub, I get to do both in most of my day. So sort of how I ended up here.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing and giving us a bit of an intro as to who you are. And when it comes to climate action, were you always involved, or was it more when you went to university, or did it come from a younger age? Where did you kind of grow that passion, I guess?
Yeah, maybe just rooted in a love of nature, and obviously spending a lot of time outside as a kid and with my family. Definitely. I think probably being born and raised in Calgary and seeing the real impact of a kind of runaway oil industry really drove me into the realm of climate action. just witnessing kind of the destruction of our lands, abandoned oil wells, huge liabilities that are not being dealt with, invasion of First Nations lands. All these things, really push me into the realm of climate action. And so I would say I've been, a climate activist, I guess, my whole life. Though sometimes maybe I focus my work more, on, like I said, issues of our economy or issues of racism, or division of folks through identity politics. So I think I've had like a pretty comprehensive activist background, and the climate piece has always been a major piece.
Okay, great. It's interesting to hear your perspective. And now just moving on to the next question. So what do you find are the most important personal satisfactions and dissatisfactions connected with the sustainability sector, especially towards climate action and activism? And what do you find the most satisfying personally, running this nonprofit? What do you find the most challenging? Do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of an easy question. Like, hands down, the most satisfying thing is connecting and unifying working class folks to take action on issues they care about. I think there's nothing more inspiring and awesome to see than a community in action and a community in solidarity. And so it's so awesome just to see here at the Climate Hub, at the Calgary Climate Hub, just how many volunteers are just doing things because they care. They've identified an issue, they've connected with us to support them in it, and then they've realized an outcome. And it's just so rewarding and so inspiring to just see people creating and doing things because they care about our environment or about issues of inequity. Especially when you're just like inundated in kind of a mass media cycle of like, negativity and despair. It can feel a bit isolating, and you can get quite despondent at times. So I think being in like a workspace where I just get to see positive people in action is just super rewarding. The most like challenging or frustrating thing I would say is like maybe sometimes feeling like our actions are deep enough. Really feeling like we're stuck on a bit of a treadmill, I guess. We're trying to address climate issues, and we're trying to make a living while doing that. And so what that often means is we need funding, of course, and a lot of that funding comes from problematic sources, whether it be casino, as you can get here in Alberta, or maybe grants or funding from one of the large foundations or granting agencies. If you sort of follow that money, a lot of it often does come from, problematic private banking industries or fossil fuel industries. And so sometimes you feel like you are part of the nonprofit industrial complex. You are helping the very people that are destroying the land and the world feel better about it and paint a story that they're not so bad. And that's not really my intention in any way. As I said, we need to be more bold, and so we need to start really looking at those structural sources of, inequity and climate impact. And when you're trying to do it as a job, it feels like sometimes you have to make concessions you rather wouldn't.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing. It's definitely interesting to hear how you kind of handle everything. And for the next question, it's more building on this one. What motivates you to keep going in this field and pursuing this initiative? It seems like you would get a lot of burnout because it seems like you tend to wear a lot of hats. It seems like it, and like how do you deal with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Burnout is a very real thing. It's funny because I think a lot of the work in the nonprofit sector sometimes seems really focused on like the negative aspects of our society. We're generally trying to address an issue, right? People that work in nonprofits, there's a problem, there's a societal issue, there's a source of inequity or oppression that needs to be addressed, and then you spend day in and day out trying to resolve it or find some solution. And so it's like your focus is really placed on the negative aspects of our society while trying to create more positive realities, and that can get a little bit burdensome at times. So What really helps me, I think what really keeps me going is I often remind myself that I do this work because I love life, not because I hate it. And so in order to honor that, I take the opportunities I can to celebrate living. I ensure that I, give good time to my friends and family, that I feed my soul through art and music. I get outside and I get traveling. I try to make sure that my job is not my entire life, because it's not. I do this because I love life and I want people to be able to live a life worth living, however they may determine that. And so I think centering that is really helpful at times, and making sure that you take that time, and you create some firm boundaries in your work life to ensure you are enjoying life. I also do it because I got little kids and I care about them, and I want them to have a world that they can live in and be happy about and secure in. And I want their kids and their kids and their kids and successive generations to have a world worth living in. So it's also a good motivator to just keep pressing on. And I think also recognizing that you may not achieve your mountaintop goal in your life, but you're going to be progressing people along a pathway towards that goal is also sometimes really relieving or empowering. It makes you feel like, I don't have to solve it all, but if I can just push people, if I can help people, if I can walk with people a little further down the trail, then I've done what I can.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting hearing how you got involved and how where you are at right now. And now, just to go a bit more, I know you talked a bit about your organization, but do you want to talk more what the Calgary Climate Hub is all about, its origins, how it began? And you can talk a bit more about, because I know you're also involved in community building, but I guess you can talk about how the Calgary Climate Hub advocates for climate change, action, leadership, and whatnot. Yeah. Okay.
Totally. So the Calgary Climate Hub began in 2017, and it was, on the same vein of just people coming together and doing things because they care about it. It was, started by just some, two or three folks who just recognized that there wasn't enough being done in our city around climate issues. There wasn't enough being done in our municipal or policy level around climate issues, and so they believe that Calgarians need to get together and start pushing into the public policy municipal space more, as well as educating and empowering Calgarians about the issues we're facing. And so it really just started like that. It had a connection with the Climate Reality Project Canada, CRPC, which was it's a branch of Climate Reality Projects. So that was like this 2006 Al Gore Inconvenient Truth thing, where he, after sort of this book and doing some tours, he and some folks set up a project where they were trying to seed climate hubs across the US and eventually Canada. So that's sort of where we had our beginnings. Climate Reality Project Canada supported those individuals in setting up a bit of a hub structure. And it just sort of grew from there. For many years, it was just privately funded by these handful of individuals who just wanted to sort of see this small project succeed. In 2023, we were able to achieve charitable status, and so now we've begun to have a bit more financial sustainability and independence, where we're able to access, a larger pool of revenue through grants and foundations and whatnot. We still are a volunteer-led nonprofit, and our goal is to unite all Calgarians committed to working together to support meaningful local action on climate change. So we say we represent a variety of communities, industries, cultures, and causes, and we believe that a broad and diverse range of Calgarians and organizations need to be engaged on the climate crisis to develop impactful solutions that fit our unique political and economic circumstance here in Calgary. So we use this hub and spokes organizational model where we have nodes and they take on tasks and support running our campaigns or whatnot, and then we have a central node where all the nodes meet every month and coordinate activities, and then just a small team of contractors who will become staff in 2025 are moving to an employee model I hope in 2025 is the goal. And so they support, myself and two other folks support our volunteer programs, our podcast, some obviously administrative and fundraising tasks, and whatever else kind of needs to be done. So how do we support Calgarians to be leaders on climate action? I guess our mission sums it up. Our mission says we educate and empower Calgarians to become active climate citizens, and that really is what we do kind of at the forefront, as we host community climate conversations where we bring in experts from all over to meet with communities and talk about climate issues and solutions. We run advocacy campaigns every year, so we run 5 advocacy campaigns every year. That sees teams of volunteers come together and support civil society action on issues that intersect with municipal politics or policy issues that are being discussed. And so we educate folks on things like asset mapping, campaign organizing, leadership organizing, theory of change. We sort of take them through the whole organizing framework, and then we empower them to design and realize a campaign over a year. And we do that every year. We have a youth climate bursary that we award to students, and that's just kind of support students to maintain their climate engagements, and sort of a small recognition for those students that are engaged in climate activism. We have a podcast that we run every month, and it runs live on CJSW as well once a month. And that also sees sort of groups of folks doing awesome climate work from, ideally Calgary, but around Canada and sometimes internationally, come and talk about issues or current news kind of under the climate lens. So talking about issues and how they're addressing them. We have a climate book club that meets regularly and sees folks gathering to read sort of like climate-themed books, both fiction and nonfiction, and then discuss. We have a Eco-Elders program where we support seniors in taking climate action. I think some of the most effective segments of our populations in pushing municipal policy can be seniors, and so I'm really trying to support them to identify issues that they care about and take action on them. I can't remember if I'm missing anything. Yeah, that's probably it. We are starting a climate justice program with Mount Royal University and University of Calgary Social Work Department in January 2025. And so that will see teams of social work practicums going around BIPOC and marginalized communities to discuss climate action and ways in which it can improve one's life, one's cost of living, and try to support more BIPOC and marginalized engagement in climate action.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, that's a diverse palette of, you're doing so much. I'll have to get some of these resources from you after. This is really great stuff.
Yeah, thanks.
In the community, yeah. Okay, now...
I did forget one more kind of key program that we do. It's a Calgary Tree Equity program, or Forest for Calgary. So we created a tree equity tool that demonstrates tree inequity in our city. So it's a map, and it shows you the difference in tree canopy across our communities. And then we have a program called Forest for Calgary, where we ideally go into those equity-deserving communities and support them in installing tiny forests. So we use the Miyawaki method, which was a method designed by a Japanese botanist in the 1970s named Akira Miyawaki, and he devised this method of planting super dense native species in an area to help support the rewilding of lands and the maturation of forests. So forests can mature, much quicker, maybe 2 to 10 times quicker depending on your environment when planted this way. And so we've planted 4 mini forests across the city, and we have one more set for next summer, and we'll try to just continue doing one every year to help expand tree canopy in our city and expand the number of trees in our city.
Oh, wow, that's really cool. I didn't know about that. I guess that's really cool. You're involved in both environmental and social impact. It seems like it's very holistic and inclusive. What you're doing, I think it's great that the work you're doing, it's much needed. Okay, great. Now that we've learned a bit more about the Calgary Climate Hub, actually a lot more, I guess we can go on to more. I guess these are going to be a bit more technical questions.
Sure.
So, not that I'm going to be testing you or anything like that. Just try your best. But the first one would be, what would be your personal definition of sustainability and sustainable development?
Yeah, I mean, I could give you a technical definition. I guess what I'll share is, in my mind, sustainability means only using, taking, consuming what one needs, and so it's about making sure that there is enough for everyone, and enough, maybe to use the words and the language and the teachings of the original peoples of this land, to make sure there's enough for 7 generations from now. And in my mind, that should be a cornerstone of sustainability and sustainable development. We need to ensure that we don't take more from the planet than what we need, and we also need to make sure that we are being reciprocal in that relationship with our environment. And so, in taking, we should also be giving. And I think if that was a baked-in definition of sustainability, we would probably be far better off.
Okay, no, that's great. And is there a particular sustainable development goal that you best advocate for? And the second part of the question is, do you still think these metrics hold merit?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I mean, the SDG goals are awesome. I would say they, on paper, they're really great ideas. I don't know that I could pick one necessarily. I feel like our work and my interests intersect with so much of them. I mean, obviously, no poverty, but it's like they're all really great. In terms of I guess this is where some of the issues come from. It's great to create a North Star, and it's awesome to have a goal. But what is the reality in realizing those goals? Especially when we think about a globalized, interconnected planet like we have today. I mean, the UN is a global institution. It's hyper aware of the current era of globalization we exist in. They could make us claim no poverty, but what does that even mean within a globalized capitalist economy? And how would that even begin to be realized? Zero hunger. Yeah, there's no reason that couldn't happen. We have more than enough in terms of food and resources for everyone in our societies. But how does that happen, again, when we don't address, the very system of production and distribution that determines who can eat and when and why? So I think these are, and I guess I could talk about the rest, but I think that's a good enough example. I think these are awesome goals. I think it's important to have these North Stars. I think they need a lot more work, and I think there needs to be a lot more clarity on how these goals will be achieved.
Hey, yeah, no, it's interesting to hear your perspective that you're right, they are a North Star, but I guess you can't take them too literally. But for me, it's interesting in grad school to see that. I don't know if it's maybe a Swedish thing, but they were bashing on the SDGs, and they're oh, well, and it could be just a different cultural perspective, but they're very much they buy into the Anthropocene, and it's very human-centered, self-centered, and it doesn't really take into account all flora and fauna, and we should adopt an ecocentric perspective. So I never really saw that before, because wherever, any school here, any institution, any university would here, they would be almost promoting those, and then yeah, I think, and then just other things too on that, who's funding them, and then like you said. But it made me wonder more about why, how literally should we take them. So
yeah, and I mean, I think it's great that they have them, but I think there needs to be a subset of achievable SDGs, right? And a short term, and how does that lead to the larger goal? And because it sort of sometimes feels it's if you just asked a kid what their perfect world would look like, they would rattle all these things off.
Yeah.
But then what, right? So
right.
Yeah,
that's fair enough. Okay, and now moving on to next question. So, from your perspective, what are the problems you see working in this field? And is there a particular, maybe, social problem that you've identified that's maybe like one burning problem that you see that you're responding to right now?
I guess, like, ultimately what I say, because, like, you know, I've shared a number of, like, aspirational goals, you know, issues that I would like to address, whether it be, like, you know, climate degradation, capitalism, exploitation of individuals, divisions of our populations, et cetera, et cetera. But, like, I think ultimately the real work that we're doing, and the real issue I think that maybe we're trying to address is that lack of cohesion in community. I think really ultimately my role in any place I am is to empower and connect people. And so I think that is really the major piece that we all need to work on, whether we're working in the climate realm or you know, poverty realm, or wherever you may find yourself. I think ultimately the goal is we need to make people feel empowered, and we need people to feel connected and like they belong somewhere, or they belong with someone. And so really, I guess that's what we, you know, really what we're doing. You know, we're empowering, we're trying to get people to take action on climate change, but we're connecting a community. We're helping people recognize that they have power and that they have unique knowledge, and that they can then translate that into action. And so, yeah, I think that's the major piece, the major social issue we're working on. You know, I already shared my frustrations around the nonprofit industrial complex and some of those challenges that, you know, a nonprofit faces. So those are also some major issues, obviously, encountered here, or maybe in any nonprofit.
Okay, great. And just moving on, I guess it's kind of, moving on to the next question. Are there particular skills that are very key or important for becoming a change maker or leader in, like, when it comes to climate action?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just in that sort of broader approach of trying to, like, unify and empower, I think one of the best things that someone in a leadership position can do is, like, make sure that they take a critical pedagogical approach, so they really recognize the unique skills, understandings, and perspectives that every person brings, and that they create a space for those people to share those perspectives and then feel heard and included. You know, trying to check some of your own biases or assumptions is obviously also a super important role. And then again, like, just like really giving people the skills, like helping people to identify, find, learn, acquire the skills that they think they need to achieve their goals, and then really, like, helping them walk that path, I think, is also super important.
Okay, great. And I'm just going to pull this next question. So what's your perspective, I'm curious to learn, on things like citizen activism, again, environmental activism towards concepts like just sustainabilities? I'm sure you heard of that. At least I can read out the definition for you, but it started by this American scholar. I'll just read it out for you, and then you can respond to that. So, okay, so here it is. Okay. So sustainability cannot be simply a green or environmental concern, important though environmental aspects of sustainability are. A truly sustainable society is one where wider questions of social needs and welfare and economic opportunity are integrally related to environmental limits imposed by supporting ecosystems. And again, that's just by Julian Eggman, the founder of Just Sustainabilities. You can argue even contributed to things like BIPOC. But do you want to, like, talk more about that? Like, because I know the Calgary Climate Hub does work in that area. Do you want to talk more?
Yeah, totally. I mean, this is, like, entirely my perspective, right? Is that intersection of climate, economy, gender, race, you know, able-bodyism. You know, any identity category you can think of, I think. And any identity category and like social or environmental economic issue, for me, they all are interrelated, right? And that speaks to, I mean, this isn't new. It speaks to that you know, historical concept of intersectionality, which grew out of the feminist movement, right? And the idea that like in an individual, their identity intersects in a number of ways, and in issues of inequity and oppression, those issues intersect in a number of ways. And so as I kind of shared, I think at the outset, in my mind, those things often intersect within the realm of our economy. And so climate action should be economic action, and climate action should be anti-racism action, and climate action should be, promoting LGBTQ identity. Yeah, I mean, just totally in accordance with that perspective. Here at the Climate Hub, how are we trying to advance that? Beyond just like the discussions we have with people at tree planting or whatever, we always try to bring up issues of economy or issues of working class division. But beyond sort of just like speaking with our communities and exploring issues collectively, as I shared, we are beginning a climate justice program in 2025, which will directly look at drawing, highlighting, exploring the intersection of climate issues and economic issues, and then really trying to support people to affirm their needs through climate action that also helps them achieve their needs, that may come from economic issues, and then also, connecting and growing that collectively with others so that we can have benefits beyond just environmental outcomes. It needs to be, improving, for example, energy efficiency will lower your cost of living directly, right? Or working with a community to create a food security project is not only going to localize your food production, but it's also going to create more stability in your life through increased access to food, but also through increased community connection. And so, 100%, these things need to be operating in tandem. Climate action is not just about creating more green spaces and making sure our trees and our rivers and our watersheds are safe, but it's that plus the human element.
Right, okay. No, it's good to hear, because I didn't know that, and I think that a lot of, like, what I like about your organization is that, again, it's very inclusive across the divide, because you already have a lot of, like, activist movements, like you have Extinction Rebellion, that was really big abroad, and then you have things like Fridays for Future. I remember when I worked in corporate news, I covered some of those, and then as part of my column, but they're very much siloed, they're not kind of addressing all these needs. But yeah, that's great. And just on this next, building on this, do you have any valuable advice you want to give to those interested in citizen activism, so this nonviolent civil disobedience, for climate action, especially if they, if they're marginalized or they lack a sense of agency? How can they get more involved?
Yeah, I mean, connect with groups, I think, is an awesome start, right? You could just go throw yourself as a lone wolf at an issue, but it's not the most impactful, and it's, ripe with issues. For instance, if you are ever to encounter a legal issue or some kind of conflict, you don't have the support of a community with you if you're alone. And then also, the story of one person yelling is not as strong as the story of 100 people yelling about an issue. So obviously connect with groups. Recognize that the emotionality, I think, is maybe something that people don't always recognize, just how high emotions are when you try to do a form of direct action or civil disobedience on all sides. The police, the company, the people protesting, whatever it might be. Everyone is really charged, and that can be very stressful, and it can take a toll on you. And so that's another reason that I think it's really important that you are connected to community and you're working with people on these issues. And on the converse, while it can be extremely stressful and ripe with high emotions, it can also be just so rewarding and exciting and invigorating to connect with folks and take action on an issue you care about. I think there's a role for it. There's a key role for civil disobedience in our society. It must not only continue but probably grow, and it's important that it grows in an intentional and connected way.
Okay, great. And do you believe there's some sort of pattern or formula to becoming a successful activist? Like, do you want? I think you mentioned it a bit before, but do you have anything more to say on that?
I don't think there is one way. I really don't. Like, I guess just making sure that you're open and understanding and accepting of others and other viewpoints. I think humanizing everyone helps too. It's really easy sometimes to just be like, oh, that person's just like a fucking pawn of the, whatever, corporate interest or whatever it is. But, a lot of people, especially working class people, are in these positions because they often don't have a choice. They are stuck in the same cycle of wage slavery or capitalist exploitation as many of us are. And so, they're doing what they can as best they can given what they have. And it's important, like as an activist, to recognize that you are dealing with people. Make sure that you just stay true to what's in your heart and try to, make sure that what you're doing is growing equity, growing community connection, and growing empowerment, and not working to make or sow additional divisions across people that care.
Okay, great. Okay, so for this next question, so I wanted to know, how do you measure your social impact on the local community, social and environmental impact? So I can go a bit more into that, but if you have anything to say on that, that would be good.
Yeah, we are, ever since getting charitable status, working more on implementing pre-post test surveys with participants in various things. We're obviously, we have a commitment to doing some level of GHG sequestration monitoring in our tiny forests. We look at, the amount of people that come to an event and the connections drawn between them, the coalitions that we build across different organizations. But we're not really putting it to some solid metric right now. Oftentimes funders request that, so we'll be moving more towards formalizing, our measure of social return. But I would say it's fairly loose right now. We set on a project that's based and rooted in community care and concern, and if we achieve that project, then I think that's how we're demonstrating our impact.
Okay, great. Okay, and then just to go a bit more into this, so especially the social, both aspects. So how do you find underrepresented, marginalized areas of the city? So for example, if I, because you had mentioned you're originally from Calgary, so let's, focus on, the northeast quadrant of the city. So that part of the city, as you know, tends to receive the least amount of investment. So how can an area like that mobilize more towards climate change advocacy, and again, how can we use environmental justice to resolve these issues rather than just kind of leaving these places on the fringes as stigmatized outcasts? I'm super curious because I was born and raised here too, but I mostly grew up in the Northeast, and just kind of I read up on your website how they're saying how I think Saddle Ridge is one of the it doesn't have as much canopy tree coverage.
Right.
And I noticed some of these things when I worked in corporate news as well, but do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, how we, So, I guess what I can say to start is, the tree equity map, the tree equity tool is, I think, a really great starting point for talking about these issues. Why is it that when we look at a map of our city, why is the canopy spread out the way it is? What's the historical context for this? What's the present day socioeconomic reality tied to this, and what needs to change? In terms of mobilizing marginalized or BIPOC communities into taking more action on climate issues, that's exactly what this climate justice program is that we're rolling out in 2025. And I think it starts with people sharing those stories and sort of trying to understand themselves. And, I think, if I can make a bit of an assumption, oftentimes BIPOC and marginalized folks are facing harder, socioeconomic realities, and thus have less time, capacity, and ability to engage in the advocacy work that's needed maybe to draw attention to the issues they're facing. And so in connecting more with community, some of those tasks can be shared more and allow for more time for people, to divide up those issues and realize some of their outcomes. So, I mean, I didn't really say anything there because the point at the end of the day is we hope to learn more in January, starting in 2025 with our climate justice program. And we hope to collectively identify both the reason and the solution.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, I saw like how you mentioned the Calgary tree equity. I think it's amazing that you have projects like this to, to raise advocacy, but also to get people more involved. I think, like you said, it is a socioeconomic reality, and maybe it's just a matter of raising awareness. Because I know they had, at least from when I was following this stuff before, that they had started like putting more community gardens in there. So I think it is getting better for mobilization, but it's good to hear your perspective on that as well.
Yeah, and I mean, if we can be, I guess, just brutally honest, I mean, the reality is we have, a settler colonial society rooted in historically racist and imperial perspectives. And so, it's no surprise that, the marginalized communities primarily in our society are, BIPOC. White settler society dominates, and we know that we live in a patriarchal, racist society largely, and whether we want to think that that's not us, and I'm not that way, and we're nice, and whatever. I mean, you only have to look at the structures of our societies, the realities of our societies, to see that maybe while the people may not believe that's the truth, the way in which our societies run demonstrate the contraries.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, no, it's eye-opening for me too, because I kind of thought about when I come back, like, how can I genuinely contribute to Calgary, and so it's great that there's these initiatives out there to do something about it and to raise awareness. So that's great. Okay, so just on that, I guess I'll move on to the next question. So how do you find that especially youth and younger persons can be taught to become leaders in the emerging sustainability sector? So I'd mentioned this before. We just did the interview just a little bit. So as you can see, Alberta is currently, well, it kind of has since the recession, I would argue, but it's been facing a brain drain due to the lack of opportunity many young people are facing. So at least I know my friends, a lot of them graduated and they relocated elsewhere because they really didn't want to work in oil and gas, just to find more meaningful and purposeful work. So is like the Calgary Climate Hub somehow involved to mobilize youth to gain agency? Because you did mention that you have some programs in schools and whatnot. So yeah, how do you inspire them to become leaders in their community? For example, do you teach them to become entrepreneurs, to run their own business, their own maybe social enterprise? How can you get I'll keep reading and then you can just respond. So how can you get youth more involved in political advocacy as well? So just to mobilize for change.
Yeah, the Hub doesn't have a specific youth focus, though we are connected with Fridays for Future, and we obviously get a ton of youth that turn up at our events. As I did mention, we do have the Youth Climate Activism Bursary, so we are trying to materially support individuals, young individuals that are taking climate action, and I think that's one of the best ways we can actually help them take on the leadership roles, give them the expanded capacity to focus their time and efforts on climate action. Beyond the Hub, I guess what I would say is we need to create curious, empowered, and inspired youth. And so, again, we've created structures in our society that seek to socialize people as subordinate to hierarchy, deferent to technocrats and experts, and sort of a cog in a broader machine. And so I think we really want to make our societies flourish and our youth actually really explore what excites them. Then we need to address those sort of structural issues, whether it be our educational institutions, our banking institutions, our economic and government institutions. Again, it's nice to say we can create a program that will inspire youth to learn how to take climate leadership when they get out of high school. But I would argue that's a bit of a band-aid approach. We could probably inspire youth to take action throughout their education, and then we would have these fully developed humans who feel energized to realize their projects to make the world a better place. So I think that structural approach is what's mostly needed.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm just gonna skip the question on, you kind of did talk a bit about your core values, so I'll go on to the next one. Okay, so we didn't talk too much about, I guess, your stakeholders. So how do you effectively communicate all these sustainable initiatives that you're working on with both your internal and external stakeholders? How do you, I guess, do you have a specific approach to doing that?
It's pretty standard nonprofit stuff, social media. We have newsletters that go out every 2 weeks. We write blog posts and news updates on our website. I would say that's probably the bulk of it.
Okay. Oh, great.
Oh, and our podcast, of course. We have a monthly podcast.
Right. Okay. Okay. I meant to ask this one before a bit when I asked your definition, but I can ask it now. So a lot of it has to do around degrowth, because a lot of, at least what I learned again, is that, the term sustainable development itself is it's a paradox in and of itself. And I know you work, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you work with a lot of businesses, I'm guessing, and so...
we don't as much. We do have some sponsors, but our corporate sponsors are generally in the renewable energy sector.
Okay.
Trying to think. I guess we don't have a ton of business connection, I would say.
Okay. Well, I guess you can still answer this question if you want.
Yeah.
I think it would be cool to hear your opinion on this. So how do you find businesses can balance sustainable goals while also striving towards economic growth? And again, as I mentioned, it seems like sustainable development is an oxymoron. That's why you have movements like degrowth coming out. And you probably know what degrowth is. So what are your whole thoughts on, again, this degrowth movement and, I guess, commodification, especially towards minimalism, because you did mention a little bit about that before?
Yeah, I would say it's a fundamental component of creating a more sustainable world. If I could borrow a term again from, I attended the Assembly of First Nations Climate Gathering last month, which saw First Nations climate actors, leaders, chiefs from all over Canada come and speak about the various projects and things they're addressing over a 3-day conference. And, one of the themes that kept coming up was this idea of colonial math. And so, cap and trade, for example, or sustainable development, for example, these are forms of colonial math. And ultimately, the goal is not about trading pollution for carbon credits or what have you, but it's about leaving the issue in the ground in the first place. It's about respecting our ecosystem. It's about recognizing our place in the world. And so, I think these are old concepts that have lived on in many cultures for a long time, and they are a fundamental piece of creating a sustainable world. In terms of the business sector, I don't think businesses have the capacity. I don't think most businesses, even social enterprises, have the capacity of limiting their growth to the level that is needed without some sort of structural support or change in our socioeconomic realities. So, what do I mean by that? For instance, I don't think a bank is going to stop trying to maximize profits for its shareholders, and that creates a number of issues. For instance, as a business owner, you may be renting your space, and the owner of that building has a mortgage out with the bank. And so, if the bank has the opportunity, they're going to raise the rates, and those rates will be passed on to you as a business owner. If there's an issue and you need to some form of rent forgiveness or delay, oftentimes that won't be allowed, right? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't even matter what the landlord wants. The principal capital holder, the bank, the person that actually is making all the calls at the end of the day, is demanding that those payments are made and that those payments go up, regardless of the socioeconomic realities we're facing. And so I don't believe in benevolent capitalism. I don't think that's a thing. I think I do believe that people are mostly good. I do believe that humans want to be accepted, loved, and part of something. But I think if we want to make a thriving world with thriving people, we need to make structures that encourage people to do that. And if we want to make a basic world with lots of issues, then we can continue with the structures that we have now, because that's what they incentivize. They don't incentivize people to be the best versions of themselves. They incentivize people to be the best economic version of themselves. And that's not always in the interests of our society or our environments.
Hey, yeah, no, that's really interesting to hear your perspective on degrowth, because when I heard it, my mind was blown. I didn't really comprehend it at first, but I guess, like what you mentioned, you work with a lot of Indigenous people, and again, it's just organizing the economy around, genuine human needs, not really necessarily capitalistic interests. So it's interesting to hear your take on that.
Thanks.
Okay, so I'm just gonna see what I haven't asked you. Oh, okay. So I am curious about this because I got to know a bit more about this when I attended, as I mentioned earlier, the Calgary Common Good, and they were mentioning something about the Green Line. I guess, what are the current and potential policy interventions that can promote more sustainable practice and trends, not just in Calgary itself, but Alberta-wide, or maybe even across Canada? Do you have any? I know it's a very broad question, but yeah, if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately what we need to do, as I keep coming back to, is create the structures that support people to live more sustainable, empowered, and fulfilled lives. So, I mean, I guess on the realm of the Green Line, free public transit to me is like a no-brainer. Not only are you going to reduce congestion on the streets, but you're going to reduce healthcare costs through automobile accidents. You're going to lower your pollutions in your cities. If you have a effective transit system that goes fast and is actually working well, then you'll probably get rid of road rage and all kinds of other societal ills that the car-dependent culture has. So that's one example. Obviously, banking systems that don't seek to exploit people at every turn could also make people make better decisions. Ensuring that our watersheds and our forests are used just as they're needed, but not just for bottled water or exporting timber at mass. Then these are all things that we probably need to do again at the policy level. And, so if I could connect it back, I guess, to our advocacy campaigns, because that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to ensure that the Calgary Climate Plan is effectively aligned with our local area development plans. So the Calgary Climate Plan is just a climate strategy that the City of Calgary's made, and we just want to make sure that when the city thinks about developing new areas, they're ensuring that there's safe, affordable, secure, and environmentally friendly housing for all Calgarians. And that's really just them honoring their own commitments. If you think about transit, we're trying to ensure that soft ridership issues are addressed. So these are issues like digital tickets being expiring when physical tickets never expire, lack of effective information around transit times and buses, and then things like funding for the low-income transit pass. We pay one of the highest transit fees here in Calgary, and we have very little as a result of it. And so what we want to do is make it so it's easier for people to ride transit. It's less expensive for people to ride transit. It's more attractive for people to ride transit. Our clean electricity campaign is looking at getting ENMAX, our municipally owned energy company, to onboard 1 gigawatt of renewable energy, or at least have a commitment to do so by 2030. And again, the city is the one who's created a climate plan, declared a climate emergency, and now we're just trying to help them create the structures and realities that will support more sustainable actions for citizens and more sustainable realities for our city.
Okay, great. And just on that, how can, and you probably did mention this, hopefully it's not repetitive, but how, I guess, can one get more involved in political, lobbying, especially against these big and powerful corporate conglomerates, because I remember because you've heard of like the single-use plastics ban, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
It was overturned, I think, last November, but I remember breaking that news story, and I'm like, oh, finally, we're already in the Stone Age. We're finally, this should have come a long time ago, but now it's, not in effect anymore. Is there, like, what else can, like, I guess, how can, the average person, like, what can they do to, like, get more involved?
Yeah, I mean, like, the clear answer, first and foremost, is become a member of the Calgary Climate Hub.
Right.
But, I mean, really, connect with any organization that's doing work that you think matters. You need to add your voice. You need to join civil society. You need to join your fellow working class folks in taking action on the issues that you care about. And so, we, here at the Climate Hub, Calgary Climate Hub, we take the very classic and well-established approach now that you think globally, but you act locally. And so we are municipally focused because we believe it's at this level that we can enact the most change. It's really hard when you're going after like a transnational, corporation or even a federal level of government. Things become a lot more onerous, a lot more difficult, a lot harder to achieve. If you scale that down to your sort of local municipal level, then you can actually go and meet with your councillor quite soon, and you can connect with people in your community and grow a movement that wants to address an issue. And so I think that's what I would just say to everyone is like, join an organization, connect with your community, work on growing a movement, affirm your needs. You have power, you have knowledge, and you have the ability to do so.
Okay, great. No, it's very practical advice. It's great. And I just on this next question, I don't know if you have volunteers per se, but this is, I guess, anyone, even people that are your followers, with the Calgary Climate Hub. So I guess, how does your relationship with your volunteers, your followers, how does it strongly affect how you shape and develop the Calgary Climate Hub? And and the second part of that question, have your followers, I guess, expectations and demands for climate change advocacy changed since, and has that impacted how you operate your organization?
So yeah, I mean, the Calgary Climate Hub is fundamentally volunteer led and run. Our volunteers are everything to us, and as I kind of shared at the start, like being here and seeing volunteers just care about something and then move on it is like everything to me. It's the most inspiring and awesome thing to be able to witness. So yes, our volunteers are the cornerstone of our organization, and it is their interests and their desires that often lead our actions. And I think that's what it means to be a good ally, to be a good supporter, and to help empower people. Is you want to create the space and the structures that will allow them to realize their goals. And I think that's what we strive to achieve here at the Calgary Climate Hub.
Okay, great. Okay, and then for this next question, you sort of already answered it, but if you want to go a bit more into that, and again, it's just is there any particular attributes and characteristics that I guess contribute most to, I guess, again, being involved when it comes to climate action? So basically, what I'm asking is, do you have any more sage advice for pioneering innovative, sustainable change through community building? And do you want to go a bit more into that?
I don't know that I do, to be honest. I don't know what my advice would be beyond what I've kind of already shared. I think I would just say, again, be bold, make sure you're drawing connections and unifying people in everything that you do. The tactic of divide and conquer is as old as time itself. And if we fall prey to that, then we will not be effective. So I would just want to remind anyone who's engaging in activism or beginning their path into activism that it's easy to trigger people's egos and to sow divisions amongst people that are all working towards a collective goal. And that's a tactic that is actively used by people to break up movements. And so I would just remind everyone to really take a deep breath, get your ego out of it. No one is a better activist than anyone else. We're all just doing what we can. And that's the most important thing, that you just work to unify people, and you put love at the front of what you're doing.
Okay, great. Yeah, I know you had answered that before, but I thought I would just ask one more time.
Yeah.
And okay, so I'm just going to be wrapping up our interview. Sorry, I went a little bit beyond the time. So for you, this last kind of question is, so what is the future vision for the Calgary Climate Hub? What are your personal thoughts on the future of, I guess, climate change advocacy? Do you want to go more into that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in terms of the Calgary Climate Hub, I just really hope that we can continue to grow just like an awesome community of engaged and caring citizens. I think I've said multiple times now, I think that is the most important thing that we can do, is help create a structure and a space where people can come and connect, feel empowered, and recognize that they can make a change. And so I just hope that we continue to grow that across all of Calgary, and that we are able to include more and more segments of our population from all over the city that care and realize that they can do things for climate outcomes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And do you have any final thoughts or something that you want to share that maybe I missed or we haven't really talked about?
No, I don't think so. I guess stronger together. That's the final takeaway. I would just say that's my catchphrase lately. So yeah, stronger together.
Okay, good. No, I like that you have a catchphrase. It'll make you more memorable. Okay.
Thanks, Rashni. It was really nice to meet you. Like I said, maybe get involved in the Calgary Climate Hub. You can look at our volunteer section too to see kind of if there's any volunteer opportunities you're interested in right now, and sign up.
Thanks so much for tuning in to yet another eye-opening episode of Sustainable You. Again, this is an extraordinary and engaging info series whose purpose is to make sustainable development and sustainability accessible to the average person in their quest to quench their knowledge on environmentalism. Be sure to leave your feedback by liking this week's released edition and by subscribing to this podcast. Again, any love from our followers is much appreciated. Signing off until next time.